Imagine you are someone who's never played Final Fantasy XIV before. I know, kind of hard to do, right? You've heard from a ton of people that the story doesn't get good until Heavensward, and maybe you've even heard, oh, you could just skip A Realm Reborn. Wrong. Not only is A Realm Reborn critical in the setting up of so many emotional story beats in Heavensward, to say that the story isn't even good until Heavensward is an outright lie. Do I think A Realm Reborn is better than Heavensward? No. What, are you crazy? Heavensward is one of my favorite expansions, but I think a large part of that is because of A Realm Reborn. Welcome to Eorzea, the country in which our adventure begins. Within your first moments of stepping into this new world, it's very clear to see that this realm is damaged. It has scars, and it's still struggling to heal from them. The neighboring country of Garlemald sees this as a prime opportunity to invade while Eorzea is weak. Your character is an adventurer, and the reason for their coming to Eorzea is completely up to the player to create. This being an MMO, your character is meant to be a vessel for you, or in some cases, what you wish you could be. Regardless of why you're here, your purpose is clear. You're an adventurer, and you're directed to your new best friend, which in all cases is a bartender of some fashion for the local pub or bar who leads the Adventurers Guild. Not a bad place for new adventurers to start. You might be thinking that this is pretty bog standard as far as openings go, but a story like Final Fantasy XIV's isn't going to start out guns blazing. It has to build up to it. That particular aspect is what turns a lot of people away from Final Fantasy XIV on their first attempt of the game. The introduction is a slow burn, and takes its time to establish the world and the characters. But man, give this game the full attention it's asking for, and you will not be sorry. I've seen so many players miss the smaller details with background characters in the story, most of the time from skipping over a line of dialogue they didn't think was that important. Like, did you know that my favorite side character, Boulder, has some pretty interesting lore throughout every expansion and is mentioned at least once in every one? He meets Coltano de Labor, Coltanet de Labar, Coltane de Labor, this guy, in Gridania while adventuring, and the two eventually join the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, and remain a constant presence in the story, even when they're delegated to the background more often than not. This is all to say that A Realm Reborn's best storytelling can be more subtle, less flashy, and require reading a lot of dialogue boxes outside of cutscenes to be truly appreciated. There's an entire side plot of a group of characters who decide to venture through Tam-Tara Deepcroft, eager to make a name for themselves as adventurers. The tank and healer are actually in love and care deeply for each other. But these people aren't you, and their dungeon run goes horribly wrong. The tank dies, the group blames the healer, and they disband, leaving the healer to writhe in her own despair regarding the death of her lover that she herself caused. Her inability to cope with the loss of her lover actually leads to her attempting to revive him with the power of dark arts, desperate to see him again. She invites an old member of their group to their wedding, a Lalafell who the player runs into in Ul'dah. His side quest is actually how the player unlocks the hard version of Tam-Tara Deepcroft, resolving this tragic side plot with the unfortunate death of the healer herself at the end of the dungeon. This world building is done mostly on the side, and could very easily be missed. The player could find the Lalafell in Ul'dah and not even know who he is or what he's talking about, perhaps thanks in part to people telling them that A Realm Reborn doesn't matter. Some people don't like this style, and that's fine. They prefer the way storytelling is done from Heavensward onward, more condensed, in your face, and to the point than their Foundation, and I can definitely agree on some of those fronts. Your personal exploits as a hero draw the attention of the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, and you're quickly recruited into their ranks because, compared to everyone else, you're pretty kick-ass. The Scions have a drive to better Eorzea, not aligning themselves with any particular faction in order to remain neutral as they gather the best of the best from each region. A new problem is rearing its head, and the Scions have tasked themselves with taking care of it. Entities of great power forged by the collective desires and energies of the beast tribes that call Eorzea home, known as primals, are being summoned. Turns out, the player character is special in more ways than one. They're in possession of a mysterious power that not only lets them see the memories of those they come into contact with, but also just so happens to protect them from the influence of primals to keep them from becoming a thrall. After slaying Ifrit, the first primal unfortunate enough to have crossed paths with you, the legend surrounding your character grows, eventually earning your character the moniker of the Warrior of Light. The Warrior of Light is an absolute beast. It quickly becomes apparent that nothing can stand in their way after humans and gods alike fall all the same to their blade. Every encounter you can feel your character becoming stronger and stronger. The previously mentioned Garleans see this champion of Eorzea as their only potential threat, so that's a nice ego boost if you weren't already feeling high and mighty from all the god-slaying and hero worship. A Realm Reborn constantly builds the mythos of the player character. It establishes them as a beacon of hope for the people, full of strength and unwavering. They stand strong against the Garlean threat, and are essentially single-handedly responsible for stopping the Garleans dead in their tracks, plus Sid of course. Eorzea rejoices. The Warrior of Light is hailed as the pinnacle of its rebirth, a shift in its history for the better. This foundation for the Warrior of Light, who is unmatched in combat and steadfast in their ideals, is essential for the turning point between A Realm Reborn and Heavensward. Because how do you bring down someone who can't be defeated? Politics. The patch notes of A Realm Reborn indicate a shift in storytelling for Final Fantasy XIV. Long gone are the days of simple adventuring and delving into dungeons. Things are just more complicated now. Alphinaud forms the Crystal Braves and holds lofty ideals for the future of Eorzea. Many members of the Crystal Braves are people you've met in your various adventures throughout Eorzea, though it takes a keen eye to recognize some of them. Alphinaud in his hubris assumes his organization will save the realm, and the Warrior of Light plus the Scions are dragged along for the ride. Those in power realize the only way to take down an organization backed by the hardest motherfuckers around is not by force, but by scheming to have the world pitted against them. And that's exactly what happens. The carefully constructed foundation of A Realm Reborn breaks to pieces, and does so quickly. The Warrior of Light is framed for the murder of Nanamo, Queen of Ul'dah. Raban suspects foul play and murders a conspirator in anger. It's actually outstanding how many things go wrong in such a short period of time in Ul'dah. The twists and turns at the end of the patch quests leave both the Warrior of Light and the player themselves reeling, and the narrative just continues to ramp up. Characters sacrifice themselves just to get you to safety, and the player is afforded no time to think as they make a desperate escape with nowhere to go. Nowhere except somewhere they aren't known. Somewhere where the politics of Eorzea haven't reached yet. Ishgard. Of course, Ishgard isn't going to just let them in. Taking temporary residence in Camp Dragonhead located outside the city, the Warrior of Light, Alphinaud, and Tataru are afforded a moment's reprieve before they seek respite in Ishgard itself, desperate for a path forward. Heavensward and the expansions that follow it would not be as good without A Realm Reborn to set the pace for them. You can't bake a cake without flour and eggs. Well, I guess you could, but it wouldn't be a very good cake, would it? A Realm Reborn is necessary. You get my point.